This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, we got a much more detailed look at what happened to Jim Rogers in 2021. City Council is proposing a tiny home encampment as one possible solution to homelessness, and the free spay and neuter program is being paused, allegedly because of suburbanites. Plus, there's a new EMT training program for city residents. It's February 9th, the Friday News Roundup. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with CityCast Mary Lee Williams and Sophia Lowe. Good morning, y'all.
Hi, Megan.
Good morning, Megan. Really quick, I just want to say thank you for the dumpling Rex. That was in our February guide episode. I'm heading to Squirrel Hill tonight for a Lunar New Year dinner with some friends.
Yay.
Hoping to try some of the dumplings you talked about.
I cannot recommend them enough. I know you know where to go, but if anybody needs help, needs a recommendation, definitely go back and listen to our guide to February in Pittsburgh or check out the recommendations on the website. We made a lot of them. I'm so glad you're going to get to try that.
Me too. And since the weather's a little bit sunnier, fingers crossed it stays that way, now's a good time to maybe get outside.
Definitely.
For sure. Well, aside from what you guys are planning to do coming up, let's talk about the news. So what is on Pittsburghers' minds this week?
Yeah, we're starting today's show with kind of a heavy topic. We have a little more clarity now into what happened to Jim Rogers back in 2021.
And just to catch folks up, Jim Rogers was a 54-year-old Black man. There's not a ton of info about his life, at least that we could find, but I do know that he died after an interaction with the police.
Yeah, it was kind of gruesome. It was in Bloomfield, your neighborhood, Sophia. So October 2021, Pittsburgh police responded to a call about a possible bicycle theft. Officers said that Rogers matched the description of what was called in. And then during the arrest process, a Pittsburgh officer, Keith Edmonds, shocked Rogers multiple times with a taser.
And Rogers died in the hospital the next day. Edmonds and some of the officers were eventually fired, and a few others got suspended. Several of those officers have since returned to work, and the city settled a lawsuit with the family for $8 million.
And now there's body cam footage, or I guess a mix of body cam and cell phone videos. It comes out to 52 minutes, and it shows how this whole interaction went down. I know there's some footage of Rogers asking for medical help.
And there are outlets who have published it and others who've described it in detail, but we're not going to be doing either of those things.
But I'm wondering how we got the tape and why it took this long, because it's been over 2 years since Rogers died.
I mean, the short answer is that Pennsylvania protects its first responders. I would say all government institutions, really, and they can make it really hard for people to access clarifying source material. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In this case, though, the law firm representing the Rogers family got a court order allowing the attorneys to release the footage.
Yeah, I can definitely believe that there's laws protecting government institutions, but I am curious, what's the long answer to this? What does the law say?
Yeah, so all states have right-to-know laws where you can access information. If you're not familiar, I feel like everyone on this call is, but I don't want to take that for granted. On the federal level, they're often called FOIAs. But here in Pennsylvania, there's this carve-out for law enforcement footage under something called Act 22. We'll link to it. The benchmarks are really kind of hard to meet if you want to get something like a body cam footage.
Yeah, so give us an example, Megan, of those benchmarks.
Yeah, if you want like a more easily digestible version of this, I recommend WESA's story on this. Kylie Kaczynski did a really good piece. But like, so for example, you have to ask for the footage within 60 days of when it was recorded. If it's at someone's home, you need to list everyone who appears in the tape, which may be kind of hard to do. There's stuff like that. And the things that they can legally deny you for are kind of broad by my reading. Like if it shows evidence related to a crime, they can say no to you, which like, why would I be requesting this footage if it weren't evidence of something? Like that's such a weird carve out to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, isn't that kind of why you want it?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So I know, Megan, you read the statute, but if you don't want to dig through all the legalese, Kylie did a great job explaining why it's so rare that this footage was released and how so much of it was released at all. I highly recommend reading through it. That is a much more, I think, straightforward breakdown than trying to dig through a government statute.
Yeah, and I got curious whether we, and when I say we, I'm talking about the state of Pennsylvania, are actually worse about this than other states. And I found an article from WHYY in 2021 that said, quote, while Pennsylvania's restrictions on police footage aren't necessarily worse than other states, advocates say access could and should be improved.
I mean, I hear what they're saying, and there's the caveat there for police footage. But I mean, as a journalist who has lived and worked as a reporter in multiple states, I definitely think Pennsylvania is worse, personally. There's this pervasive attitude that our institutions are doing us some kind of favor when they fulfill requests. Like their reflexive position is to say no or to fight us. Where in other states, it's not like that. If it's supposed to be public information, they just give it to you. Or in a lot of cases, they just create systems so that you don't have to ask. You can just go find it on your own. Like that, to me, is what transparency is supposed to mean.
Yes, snaps, Megan, snaps.
Fair enough. And I know that the Rogers family attorney has said that a big motivation for getting this tape out is to create a change in policy. And this lawyer, he wants people to request things that have been captured on a body cam in the future. But I mean, given how long this is going to take and given all of those like very specific requirements you have to meet, I wonder if people will end up doing this. But I think the hope for me is that, you know, this kind of situation doesn't happen again where the police aren't using force, tasering people. Like no interaction with the police should end in a death.
Yeah, I mean, Kylie's story goes more deeply into this, and other outlets have too, but the city did institute some change in policy immediately after this incident under Bill Peduto, former Mayor Bill Peduto's administration, and has continued it, or say they've continued it under Gainey. So I hope you're right, Sophia. I hope that it won't happen again.
So on to the next news item. Mary Lee, what have you been watching this week?
Yes, a bit of a shift. So there is a proposal that is scheduled to be getting a public hearing on February 20th, and it has to do with like tiny homes for those who are experiencing homelessness. It was in front of the City Planning Commission.
Yeah, there has been some good local reporting on this for a while now. Rich Lord for Public Source, and once again, Kylie Kaczynski for WESA. But the proposal itself is not new. It was brought up last year as one of several potential ideas to try and address our homeless population.
Yeah, I remember reading about some other options that included basically like redoing an office building into a dorm-style apartment building, and then also another long-term shelter building.
Yeah, and so this idea of the tiny village seems to be the one that's like making moves right now. Counselors Deb Gross and Anthony Coghill showed off some prototypes in January. They were suggesting 10 units that are roughly like 9 by 8 by 10, and that cost about $2,000 a pop. And they look like these like little sheds.
My favorite part of first of all, they look darling. But my
cute.
favorite part is that Coghill built it himself, like the first prototype built it himself.
Yeah, I didn't want to like get into that here, but it was really cute. Also, they have like little mailboxes on them. I just thought that was like really cute.
I'm skeptical that they're all going to look like that. Like, I know we're many, many steps removed from them actually coming to fruition, but
or
still,
if it even happens, yeah.
Yeah, it had siding. Like, what?
Oh, wow.
They looked like little cute set sheds you might like put in your yard or something for like if you wanted like a cute little escape. Like They're really adorable. But getting back into it, the newsy meat of the story, Public Source reports it got a mixed response from the city commissioners. Some questioned if this is like a long-lasting solution to address homelessness, and others were like enthusiastic to get the project going. So it's kind of mixed right now.
Yeah, I mean, the question about like how long this is for, I think is really worthy, right? Like Public Source has been doing some pretty great reporting on how our leaders and lawmakers have been approaching this question of homelessness for a while now. Like they've really been covering the heck out of it, especially encampments. But one thing that they've brought up over and over is this idea of marginalization, like where people are allowed to be homeless. And, you know, one thing I've seen in some of their stories is like you don't want to put a large number of traumatized individuals in the same space unless you have a tremendous amount of support. And it's been mostly, it seems like, advocates doing a lot of that work and less of the city. Maybe I've got that wrong, but it just like seems like this is something that needs more discussion to come to fruition.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I do think generally there's going to be a lot of discussion.
Yeah. I mean, 10 units is small, but some communities like this have gotten really, really big. Like there's a Texas Tribune article that actually a friend of the pod sent us a few weeks ago that did a really good job exploring what this can look like on a much bigger scale. I'll make sure we link to it in case you want to dig in more.
And thinking about like other resources people might need, I'd be curious about how they're planning to handle hygiene. Like, is there going to be a space where you can do laundry, take a shower? Is there any plan for how that's going to work?
Yeah, or like, you know, be able to access any other services like, you know, access to food, things like that. At least nationally, other cities seem to be handling it in different ways. And I guess Pittsburgh is so early in this process. The other thing, too, I bet zoning is going to come in on this. Like, we always have some weird conversation around zoning for everything.
Zoning.
Yes.
It is back. We can never escape zoning, everyone. Exactly. So in November, a bill was introduced in City Council that would create a zoning use that's called a temporary managed community. And this would basically allow for the creation of these tiny home villages under certain conditions, like prohibiting junk. There's like a certain capacity
Who's
of
junk.
It's basically just trying to keep the space clean. I didn't dig too deep into what that means.
But like by whose definition?
You know, we're still waiting to the jury's out on the zoning ordinance. But, you know, they have a way to kind of try to create something like this, to carve out space for it.
So I'm guessing we'll see where things go in the coming weeks. As usual, we'll be keeping an eye out for more updates.
Exactly.
Shipping can make or break a sale, so optimize how you ship your orders with ShipStation. They make it easy to automate and manage orders no matter how big your business grows. And they might even be able to help reduce shipping and warehouse costs. So optimize and keep up your momentum for growth with ShipStation. Sign up for your free 60-day trial now at ShipStation.com and use the code POD. That's ShipStation.com with the code POD.
This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
Sophia, your turn. What have you been thinking about this week?
One piece of Pittsburgh history and Black history that I think more people should know about is that emergency medical services started in the Hill District.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with this because I have a friend who's a paramedic and has also been really interested in this history. But before we had ambulance services, there wasn't like widespread help that would come to you. So if you got hurt, what would happen is you might actually end up calling the police or a funeral home. So not good options.
Like, this isn't it like the optics of that? Like, just I'm calling the funeral home because I'm hurt and I need help. It feels weird.
A lot of people died because people just like couldn't get the care that they need. And the people who did respond to a medical emergency like weren't as qualified as the paramedics that we have today.
And of course, thinking about the Hill District, that was and is a predominantly Black neighborhood. So that means that there's not necessarily a guaranteed positive relationship with the police if they're the ones responding too.
Or police just wouldn't respond to Black neighborhoods in the same way that they did white neighborhoods at the time. The period we're talking about is like the 1960s. So in 1967, folks established the Freedom House Ambulance Service. It serviced the Hill District, parts of Oakland, and downtown. They teamed up with an anesthesiologist named Peter Schaefer, who developed this paramedic training program. And we previously interviewed a guy named Kevin Hazard. He wrote a book about the ambulance service. Here's what he said about how the whole thing came together.
Jim McCoy, who's a civil rights activist, starts Freedom House with the idea of bringing job training programs to people in a neighborhood. He didn't want just any job. He wanted something aspirational, something that could lift people up to another level, but he was having trouble finding one. So Freedom House has all these people, but doesn't yet have an aspirational idea. Peter Schaefer has this aspirational idea, but no people. They come together, and in that moment, the world's first paramedic training course is born. And because of Freedom House's mandate, its location, its philosophy, McCoy says, look, you can do anything you want, but the people that we recruit for this have to be Black, and they have to be from the Hill. On that, we won't negotiate. And Saffer says, let's do it. And then there you have it. That's how the world's first paramedics end up being, 24 Black men from the Hill District.
And so in many respects, the folks that created Freedom House ended up being kind of the model for how ambulance service could work everywhere else in the nation. It's a really wonderful legacy.
Yeah, definitely. But, now pivoting to the news part, at a Black History Month event, Mayor Gainey announced a pilot program called Freedom House EMT Training. So honoring this historic program, it's a full-time paid training program for city residents.
Yeah, not too shabby. $16 an hour. The whole thing is 12 weeks long. And then after, you're guaranteed a job as an EMT with the city if you want it.
I am so glad that there's a direct pipeline to getting a job after the training program. That's so important. I know It's not always like 100% guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, lots of training programs, they can connect you, right? But they don't necessarily have the pipeline. So it's cool that they connected the dots there.
And then I saw a Trib article say that once you're done with the training program and have a job as an EMT, that pay will go up to a little over $20 an hour.
Yeah, and I think having that pay is so important. And when Gainey announced this, EMS chief Amara Gilchrist talked about how one of the goals of this program is to increase diversity of EMTs in the city and make sure that the training is paid to lower some of these barriers to entry.
Yeah, I saw several stories where she said, I wish that this had been around when I was a young person doing this. It would have made my life a little bit easier. Actually, too, in the stories for this, there were so many photos. It hit me that all the public safety bureaus in the city right now are led by people of color. So Gilchrist for EMS, wow. Daryl Jones is the fire chief, and then Larry Scarrato for police, plus Gainey. I don't know. It was just a cool realization,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, and while I was reading about Freedom House's ambulances and paramedics, I also saw an article in the Pittsburgh Union Progress about how the current EMS chief was mentored by John Moon, who was previously a paramedic with Freedom House. So I thought that was another cool connection, and you can really see that legacy of the first paramedics in Pittsburgh, still around today.
Mm-hmm. The reporter for that one was Helen Fallon. I thought that was a really good story.
Mm-hmm. And then for anyone interested in applying to the training program, we'll have a link to the job description and application in our show notes. So that'll give you the requirements for the role. It looks like you do need to be a resident of Pittsburgh. You've got until February 22nd to apply, and that application closes at 4 p.m. that day.
Business hours. And if you want to learn more about the history of EMS programs here in the city, you can listen to our full episode about the Freedom House Ambulance Service. There's also a new exhibit at the City County building about the ambulance service. So it includes things like pictures and medical equipment that was used at the time. And then some of the photos were actually contributed by John Moon himself. Super cool.
Okay, so last up, a kind of ending, pausing, maybe ending of sorts. The city's free spay and neuter program, it just got paused.
Until you told me about it, I didn't even know that we had a free spay and neuter program. I adopted my cat literally right after she got rescued and spayed. Like, her tummy was shaved, not fuzzy and soft. She had kittens as a teen mom, like under a year old.
I didn't even know you could have kittens that young, or like cats could have kittens that young.
Yeah, this is exactly the situation where this type of program is useful to control the population of dogs and cats, especially feral ones that live outside. I actually use this program myself for my 2 cats, and I am a huge advocate for it because spay and neuter services are expensive procedures. And I was like so thrilled to learn that the city offered this program for free.
So you had a good experience with it then?
Yeah, it was super easy. You did have to send in a physical form via post,
like
to
snail
apply.
mail.
Yeah, so that was kind of annoying because I was like, why can't I just email this? But it was generally a breeze, and I'm really frustrated because what happened is the city's pausing this program because apparently people who lived outside the city were using it.
Yeah, a Trib story says that apparently people were lying on the forms and giving city addresses. And then they were also promoting ways to do that on social media. Like, it just sucks.
Ugh. Yeah, that's so annoying.
Yeah, I would be really frustrated too if I had a pet that needed to be spayed or neutered. Because when I went looking at the details of it, I saw that people could have applied for up to 5 pets, which could save you thousands of dollars, a few $1,000s. Like, these services are expensive.
And I want our outlying communities, like our suburban communities, to have access to this stuff, but like not in a way that's going to like cost the city their ability to do it at all, you know? Anyway, the city's press release says that the program is going to be coming back, but it doesn't have a firm date for that yet. And they might be making some changes. The city's director of public safety said, quote, "We are excited to build out a more sustainable and equitable program and are looking forward to rolling out a new and improved program to all city residents that also safeguards good stewardship of our taxpayer dollars," end quote.
Wow, that feels like a very pointed call out to all of the people outside of the city who were sneaking into the program. Do we know what kind of impact this will have on like the feral cat population? Because I know that's a big deal around here.
I haven't seen anything. I don't know if y'all have. I kind of feel like exact numbers might be tough for something like that.
True.
Yeah.
But we did have an advocacy group called Conquer the Colony on the show a while back to talk about their work trapping and spaying and neutering cats. They explained that they can have little kitties all year round.
Once a cat is pregnant, they can get pregnant while they're still lactating. And then in turn, the kittens can also start to get pregnant and start mating as early as 4 months. So that's just an example of how the population completely explodes.
I repeat, my cat got pregnant before she was 1. She was so itty-bitty when we got her that I thought she was a kitten herself. But I guess kittens can also get pregnant.
Poor Pistachio.
Yes, she had to fend for herself in the wild, well, suburbs of Indiana, until the shelter found her. So anyway, yes, definitely spay and neuter your animals.
I do have some news for people. If you've already applied and hearing this is making you anxious, you are not going to be left hanging completely. According to the city's press release, the Bureau of Animal Care and Control is supposed to contact people directly, but it doesn't say whether you'll have an alternative. So I'm really hoping that those folks who have applied are still able to get their animals spayed and neutered for free.
Yeah, it would really stink to realize that, like, I meant to send in the form. Like, maybe you had, like, a couple weeks you sat on it and then, like, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you need another option, this isn't free, but is probably the next best thing if the city program's on hold. Spay Neuter Clinic has locations in the North Hills and Penn Hills. It's a lower cost, more affordable option. Prices do vary a lot based on whether you're looking for a spay or a neuter, whether you have a cat or a dog, and then the size of your dog. But at the very least, all options are under $200.
Interesting. Well, just so we're sending everyone into the weekend with a teeny bit of good news, Kennywood has announced their opening day for this season.
Yay!
You can get your tickets and head over to the park starting Saturday, April 20th.
420.
Oof.
What an opening date. You won't see me there then, but Kennywood's absolutely on my list this summer because I want to ride the Steel Curtain. It was closed when I went there last year.
I will be holding your bags for you when you are on the roller coasters. I think I mentioned this in last week's FNR, but I am far too fragile to be thrown around like that. I shan't go on a roller coaster.
I'm usually good for 4 or 5 rides. At least I was before I had a baby. But then I'll be right there with you, Mary Lee. We can get potato patch fries and take selfies with the animatronics.
That sounds ideal.
I will be there for the fries as well.
Well, I hope y'all have a good weekend, Yens. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, you too.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Reminder, you can find all of our shows, old and new, on our website. That's pittsburgh.citycast.fm. Our music is by Benji. Mary Lee Williams is our executive producer. Sophia Lowe produces the show. Francesca DeBecco writes our newsletter. And I'm your host, Megan Harris. We'll be back on Monday with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend, everyone. Kennywood's open, but not open. Not that way.